Hi, this is Lisa, and you are listening to I Love That Movie. This podcast is for movie lovers. It's not an unbiased opinion, it's not a straightforward review, it's just a couple people talking about a movie that they love. The format is each week I have a guest, and that guest and I discuss a movie that they love, something they're obsessed with, something they connect with. We'll talk about the plot, the director, and the actors, but we'll also talk about the personal connection my guest has with that movie. So if that sounds like something you want to listen to, keep listening.
Hey, this is Lisa, and if you want to follow me on Twitter or X, I'm at ILTM Podcast, at ILTM Podcast. And I'm also on Instagram at I Love That Movie Podcast, all one word. We also have a Patreon. The show is always free, but if you want to support me on there, you can. That's at patreon.com/. I love that movie, all one word again. And if you sign up for my Patreon, you get a weekly bonus episode of everything else that I'm watching. A lot of times I get questions on movie releases, what I think of the Alamo Drafthouse situation, things like that. That's all on the Patreon. So if you want to hear that, go ahead and subscribe for as little as $1 a month. But I have a returning guest. I have Albie on the podcast. You have heard him in previous episodes. He's always been with the Mikey Horror Picture Show, so this is his first solo guest appearance. But say hi, Albie.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
I was gonna say how is everybody, but they can't answer.
I know, but they still care. They care that you asked, so it's your intent that matters. But
Yes.
Albie, if people haven't heard you on the show before, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
So I'm Albie Robles, and as you said, I'm part of the Maki Horror Picture Show, and that's a comedy show that we do. However, I'm primarily a voice actor. I've been in One Piece and a handful of other animes, a lot of video games and indie film. I also do location sound for film, and I am also the host and producer of the Scare Me podcast.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on. I feel like your pick today makes sense then, given the content of your podcast. But if this is your first time ever listening to my podcast, my guest always picks the movie. So, Albie, what movie did you choose to talk about today?
I chose to talk about John Carpenter's The Thing.
Nice. I love this movie so much. I didn't even have to rewatch it, but I will. I really like this film, and but enough about me. I've seen this several times in theaters. I've seen it at Alamo actually. But tell me your journey with this movie. Like, when did you first watch it? You're talking about the 1982 version, right?
That's correct. John Carpenter's 1982 version, which comes up a lot when people say that remakes are never as good, and this usually comes up because this is, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, a much better movie than the original was. It's made the change of that I think makes it work better, of that it can take the form of anyone. In the original movie, there's a very definite look to whoever is the thing. It's not in disguise as it is here, and I think it's the combined element of isolation, being down in Antarctica, and the combination of that and then not knowing who to trust, who is still themselves. It makes it such a strong combination. I first saw this. I mean, I think probably in high school.
Okay.
I've been a horror fan my whole life, but this one, it took me till high school to watch.
What can I ask? What media you watch it on? Like, how did you see this? VHS, on TV? How did you
This
watch it?
was on VHS. I had a friend who was a big cinephile at the time, more so than me, who kind of got me into a lot of these horror classics and stuff I hadn't seen yet. So one night it was his turn to pick a rental, and he chose this one, and it was just such a great movie.
Yeah, I agree. I'm trying to remember when I saw this movie. I know that I saw it on DVD, but I can't remember the very first time I watched it, to be honest. I've just seen it several times over the years, but I was definitely an adult. If you're still listening to this, I would say, well, and hope you are, but I want to give a slight warning. I don't really do before and after spoilers. So if you don't want this movie spoiled for, I mean, this came out in 1982. I feel like you've had time to watch it, but if you don't want spoilers, I would actually pause here and come back later. But if you're still with us, I'm going to read the synopsis really quick. And I got this from Wikipedia. I'm just gonna give that credit to Wikipedia. In remote Antarctica, a group of American research scientists are disturbed at their base camp by a helicopter shooting at a sled dog. When they take in the dog, it brutally attacks both human beings and canines in the camp, and they discover that the beast can assume the shape of its victims. A resourceful helicopter pilot, played by Kurt Russell, and a comp doctor, played by Richard Dysart, lead the camp crew in a desperate, gory battle against the vicious creature before it picks them all off one by one.
That about sums up
It
the plot
truly
of this.
does.
Uh,
I read that I was going to start off a little bit with just a couple of quick facts, and then we can kind of go off from there. But
okay.
I read that John Carpenter has stated that of all his films, this is his personal favorite.
I had not heard that, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite John Carpenter films. But yeah, also this film is considered a benchmark in special makeup effects, obviously. And the effects were created by Rob Bottin, who was only 22 at the time he started the project.
He's always done amazing work.
Yeah. And also, this is the first of John Carpenter's feature films, which he did not score himself. As you know, if you're a John Carpenter fan, you obviously know that he's famous for that. Even the intro to my podcast is inspired by him. The film's original choice of composer was Jerry Goldsmith, but he passed. And Ennio Morricone, I'm always afraid I'm going to say his name wrong, composed a low-key Carpenter-like score filled with brooding, menacing bass chords. Morricone's score would dubiously be nominated for a Razzie as the worst score.
Oh, I don't. It's one of those things where I think if those same people were to look back today, they would take that back because
I know.
it is such a great score. I mean, this is somebody who was known for mostly scoring Italian westerns and
Yeah, with
does a
Sergio
lot of
Leone, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and so he his scoring is just always incredible to listen to. And then of course the most recent thing he came back to score the
Hateful
Hateful Eight.
Eight. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what a score that was! So
Yeah,
this
I mean,
composer definitely has it.
yeah, he's a genius, and I think that kind of follows the vibe of this movie. Like, I didn't realize that it was not a box office success. It's so funny when you go back and see films like this that are so iconic, and I mean, I guess it is kind of a cult classic, but just, if you love cinema, you basically like this movie, right? Like, it's considered one of the best horror films, and it's just so interesting when a movie is so far ahead of its time. I feel like it doesn't get well received.
I think that's probably accurate, and I think maybe part of the panning of that score would be that it's not the traditional. Here's this character's theme. Here's this character's theme.
Yeah.
It really is more ambiance based in that it's more there. It's there more to promote a feeling of being unsettled and uneasy than it is to just outline. Oh, here's a part where you're supposed to jump. And I can see that being taken the wrong way.
Yeah. But this film goes on really to inspire so many things after it. This is like a couple years, 1982 is a couple years after Alien, and I feel like we're still in this sort of gooey 80s era of, sci-fi and horror. It's just has a very iconic look to the film that I think we look back with, nostalgia and fondness for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, I think also with it's such a different thing for Carpenter to do since he was doing like
Mhm.
after Halloween, which he kind of reinvented the horror franchise, and
Sure.
I feel like with this he kind of turned it on its head again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. This is like 1 year after Escape from New York too, and he'd done The Fog and a few other things, but this is so different from those movies. I completely agree with you. So I'm assuming you're a big fan of John Carpenter's work in general.
Oh yes, and I went to see this both times it was re-released recently, and once at this most recent one was at the Alamo Draft House. A friend invited me for my birthday to go, and they gave away an LP, like an album with a gift bag. That in the bag is a canvas
Wow.
bag that's black, and in white it says music by John Carpenter. It's the still from Halloween saying that, and it was just music from Carpenter scores. So that was a really awesome thing that I wasn't expecting to get.
That's really cool. So did you get to like meet him or see
No. This
him?
was just a re-release. So
Oh, okay.
basically, it played at all the Alamo Draft houses.
Okay. I know sometimes he's like, like he's been to like I think Frightmare and stuff like that. So I wasn't sure, but um, is this your favorite John Carpenter film?
I mean, it's my favorite John Carpenter film, and it's my favorite horror film.
Yeah.
It really all around. And I mean, I watch a lot of horror. I like I
Well,
said,
yeah,
I'm a
you got a whole
lifelong horror
podcast.
film fan. Yeah, horror books. I've loved horror my whole life. But this is my favorite horror movie. There are maybe movies that I think are maybe better movies, or maybe I find scarier. But this one is the one I like to watch the most.
It's fun to watch. And along with what I was talking about earlier about it not being super well received at the time, I even heard like that the original director of, the original The Thing, really did not like this movie. Specifically the gore. I feel like it took a long time in pop culture for general audiences, or maybe and maybe we're still here, like general audiences and I guess like cinema snobs basically
Yeah.
to be okay with gore. Like that seemed to hallmark like, oh, this is cheesy or this is gratuitous. And I don't think this movie is either of those things, actually. I think it's done incredibly well, but I just don't think that they were ready for that at the time. But that's got to be such a huge bummer, for John Carpenter to like release this film and for the original director to be like, I hate this.
Well, I mean, it's gonna happen time and time again
Yeah,
with so many things. But I can imagine if you work at something that you're gonna have people that like it, people that don't.
that's true.
Um,
That's fair.
One of the craziest, to me, one of the scariest horror movies I ever saw was the film Hereditary, which I see a lot of people just really hate on that and talk about how boring it is, which it blows my mind because I found it to be so frightening that I won't watch that one again. Like I loved it,
Wow.
but like
I
I'm
love that
good.
movie too.
I'm not. I don't need to see it again. It left me feeling pretty bad. So
Yes.
so
That's
it's that's kind of, no matter how good something is, there's always going to be a lot of people that don't like it.
I won't sidebar too long, but with Hereditary specifically, I remember seeing it with a group of friends, and when we left, I felt so disturbed by that movie. Like I at first couldn't tell if I liked it at all. Like I was just horrified. And it was the first time in a long time that I'd seen a horror movie that really disturbed me. And then I remember my husband being like, I think I loved that. And it took me like 24 hours to decide. The people that I was with thought it was stupid. I mean, ripped into how like dumb and horrible it was. And I was like, I think you're wrong. I think that it's going to end up being, a real Hallmark horror film. And it has been actually,
Yeah.
since then. But I guess again, that kind of goes to the thing where when something really breaks the mold, I think sometimes audiences have a hard time digesting it. So you're right.
Yeah, I think Ari Aster is like Marty McFly going, I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet.
Yeah. I love that.
My niece put it best when we finished watching that movie. We went to see it with a couple of nieces, and they're both grown now. They were both grown by the time, so we weren't taking little kids to see it. But
That's good.
we went to go see it with our nieces, and one of them afterward just kind of sat quietly through the credits, and then she just goes, "I feel spiritually unclean."
Yes, it's just it's so good. But yeah, to your credit too, like, or to your point, um no matter what it is, someone's not going to like it. So that's true. But the point is, we love this movie. That's why we're here to talk about it. So what else should we talk about? Should we talk about the cast maybe?
Let's get into the cast. I can start with just a little thing that I
Sure.
just learned that I thought was pretty fun. The voice of the computer is uncredited, um, and it's Adrian Barbeau, which
Oh,
out of all the many times I've seen this movie, I didn't know that.
interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that actor in case audiences
Oh,
don't know?
well, Adrian Barbeau, she's she's kind of an iconic actress. A lot of horror in her past.
Mm.
Um, she was in Escape from New York
Oh,
so she
okay,
was like one
okay.
of the female lead in that movie.
Uh-huh.
She's in Creep Show, The Fog, so she's one of the favorites of Carpenter. So
Nice.
he put her in this little film.
Yeah. I think the
Little
biggest
film,
names that's
yeah.
a little film, yeah. The biggest, two people that stand out to me the most, I think, are, first of all, Kurt Russell, obviously, as McCready.
Oh, he's so good in this.
So good. And then, Wilford Brimley too. Stands out to me as well.
Yes, which in my childhood, I had only ever seen him in the Cocoon movies and the oatmeal commercials, and
Yeah.
like that's what I knew him from. It was very surprising to see him in this role. I also loved I'm trying to think of what his name was. Who was kind of the guy in charge? Oh, Donald Moffat
Hmm.
is his name. Like I thought he was really great. He
Yeah.
stood out as trying to be in charge in a very terrible situation.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the real star of the movie is the effects. I think
Yes,
Rob Bottin
100%.
is the real star of this.
Yeah.
The
Can you
way
talk a
they
little bit about his
characterize
career
this
too?
this thing.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Say that again.
Uh,
Sorry.
uh, you know. Oh, sorry. Well, Rob Bottin, it's I don't know if I can specify what he's done off the top of my head because I know I see his name everywhere. I know RoboCop was one of the big ones. Um,
Oh, nice.
I'm trying to think of what else. So I was always into special makeup effects growing up, and that used to be what I wanted to do growing up. And there were
Oh,
several
wow.
names, Stan Winston, Rick Baker, and Robert Dean was one of the names that always came up. I think he did effects for Total Recall, all that cool stuff. Built the animatronics of Arnold being out in Mars once the atmosphere
Oh,
was gone.
yeah.
Um, all the great effects in RoboCop, the melting guy, and a lot of the fun stuff that was done with that. I think he did Seven as well.
Yep, he did in
If
Legend.
you look him
Yeah.
up, he's done effects for just so much. Almost anything that you see that he's done is a very well known movie.
Wow.
He's been at it for a long time. He's still doing it, I believe. I'm gonna look up and see if he's still alive because I think he is. Let me look.
Let's see. I
Yeah,
have him pulled in.
he's still
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah, 1959. Yeah.
I'm seeing this picture here now, and it looks like he's the Dave Grohl of special effects.
He really does. I was thinking that too. Yeah, no, I was just curious because, like you said, it's probably the main star. I think the other main star of the show for me is honestly just the setting. It takes sort of that isolation and fear feeling that you get, say, like in Alien, right? And I just keep
Hmm.
saying that because that was 1980, or 1979. But um, I think there's so many beautiful shots on the snow. And obviously for younger people listening to this, if you're really into Stranger Things, I think the last season borrowed heavily from this movie.
Oh yeah,
When you're out in the middle of nowhere with David Harbour's character, he's sort of a McCready-esque character in that. But yeah, I just think that both those things, like you said, are really good. I remember the first time I saw it, like I said, I'm seeing it way after 1982, right? But I think the movie ages really well because it's still chilling and
Yeah.
beautiful and horrifying to watch. Like just all those things. I really like it.
I think this type of story does go on in age as well, because that isolation is, as you said, it's as frightening as the confrontation. When you're in
Yeah.
an environment where, yeah, and there's something scary happening inside, but going out is going to kill you as well.
Yeah.
You're trapped in this spot with this thing, and even if it's not quite a horror, that's why the Abyss was so effective.
Hmm.
But in Sphere by Michael Crichton was so effective. These are
Yeah.
deep sea, bottom of the ocean stories. There's nowhere to go, and when it's just it's you're dead in here or you're dead out there, is a very frightening concept.
Yeah. Along those lines, I guess we've kind of talked a little bit about the director, the actors, and composer and special effects. But are there some specific scenes that you kind of wanted to cover?
Oh my gosh, yes. There's some scenes that I just love in here. That, to me, first of all, the opening of this helicopter chasing this dog and shooting at it is
Yes.
it just makes you immediately go, why?
Yeah. Why would
What
they
is
be shooting a dog? It doesn't make
the
sense.
story here? But what ends up happening with that dog in those cages is
Hmm.
incredible to me. The tentacles shooting out, the face opening up like a flower, these kind of flesh roots that entangle around it and pull it open. This is all so mind-blowing to me. It is so good.
Yeah.
Um, and then the sequence with the blood test is just wonderful. The
Yes.
very high tension all
Yes.
throughout, and it's setting you up to something you're expecting. Like they really really tee it up for you, and you're ready for it, and they do something else instead, which is a great scare.
Yes.
And I guess the last scene I'll mention is the wonderful someone's having a heart attack, they lay him on the table, they
Hmm.
shock him once, and when they shock him the next time, that chest opens up, bites the arms off, that
That part
head
is
pulls
so
off and
insane.
becomes a spider.
Yes.
It's wonderful. It's so that's the best horror. I think maybe the scene that makes it my favorite scene.
I
My favorite
completely
movie, I mean.
agree. It's just like it's hard sometimes with horrors. A lot of times when there's a creature, it's always in shadow, right? You're kind of what really builds up the fear around whatever it is that's chasing our main characters. You don't show it. And I think what's really unique about the thing is, oh, you see it often. Like
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter that, that it's special effects or that it's not real because I think it's like you said, sort of like the sequence of the events. Like the guy has a heart attack, and then, like you said, they try to shock him, and then like I can't get that image of the hands going through his chest out of my
Oh,
mind.
so good.
It's so gross, and then it's so horrifying, and then yeah, his arms get bitten off, and then the head thing happens. It just feels like it's escalating more and more and more. I think the last time I felt it wasn't horror, but the last time I felt like, whoa, I'm watching something new like that was probably in that when I saw the second Dune movie recently. Like,
Wow, I have
you
yet to
know,
see that. I can't wait
oh
to see it.
man.
I'm very
Yeah.
excited to see it.
But I feel like that director does the same thing where it's like things that you're not expecting to see. And so it just kind of heightens the tension and you're like, oh my God, what am I looking at by the time you see that spider head thing,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's so gruesome and it's so scary. It's just so good.
And then the guy with the cigarette dangling out of his mouth says the
Hmm.
line that voices what we're all thinking, which I don't know. Can you swear on this podcast or no?
Yeah, yeah, you
And he
can.
says, "You got to be fucking kidding me," which I think is so great. And they did that in Stephen King's It Chapter 2.
Yeah.
Instead of having just a head in the fridge, they had the head turn into a spider, which gets you
Hmm.
thinking about this movie. And then to take away any doubt that they're referencing this movie, they have Richie say that line, which I thought was great. It was a lot of
I
fun.
agree. I agree. I'm looking at like just stills from different, monsters in the movie. And it's just so good. And like the explosions and the fire and like the visuals of the flares in the dark, and it just, I don't know, it's just so lovely to look at.
All of
Keep
it,
saying
and
that.
then that ambiguous ending is really good.
Hmm.
That leaves you wondering who can you trust, what is happening, and
Yeah.
and I've seen an explanation in that uh which I had never picked up on the times that I've watched it.
Ooh,
You
I
know,
can't
once
wait
I
to hear.
so you're wondering are both of them still themselves? Is one of them just pretending? And I can't remember if Carpenter confirmed this or not, but somebody pointed out, they see each other, and McCready
Mhm.
hands him that bottle, and he kind of says like he doesn't know if you can trust him. He hands him that bottle, and Childs takes a swig of it. Is it Childs? I think that's Childs. I may have the names
Mm.
mixed up, but anyway, that bottle was, they said like that he was making those Molotov cocktails earlier, and so that he's handed him a bottle of gasoline to see if he's
Oh,
human, and he just takes a swig like it's nothing, and that's a sign that he's not.
interesting. I did not notice
So
that. I have to watch it again now.
I do too, because I read that after the last time I saw it. So it's a and I like when a movie keeps giving you new things to consider.
Yeah, I like movies like that with, like you said, kind of an ambiguous ending. What did happen at the end? You're kind of just left wondering. I think having that mystery to it, even if there are some hints, is probably, I think one of my favorite types of endings.
Oh yeah, yeah. I like having to think and ponder about what you've just seen.
Yeah.
Now they made like this prequel back in, I think, what, like 2012 or something,
Yeah, I noticed
that
that when
was
I was
not
looking up the
very.
movie.
I didn't like it, and a big part of that was the disappearance of practical effects. It was uh,
Mm,
they decided to do more computer effects, which a lot of the time I don't mind so much, because I know a lot of people point out like, oh well, you could tell it's a computer effect. Well, but a lot of the time before, you could tell it was a makeup or prosthetic. You can see it as a special effect, regardless.
mhm.
But I don't know, these effects in particular didn't do it for me. They didn't feel like they were there. And I found out later, I became friends with just online with Shane Zander, who did a lot of the special makeup effects for the new It movies. And he's the person who did the effects for for that version of the thing, or that prequel or
Mhm.
whatever. And
Oh,
is this is the story about the people, that the encampment that they went to, and it shows what happens there. It's a cool idea.
yeah.
What really pulled me out, and it's upsetting to know that he told me that they did all the practical effects. Like, he was there, he made everything by hand, and then for whatever reason, the studio or the director, somebody opted to replace all of those with the computer graphic effects, and that's just, it took so much out of it, and it's a shame to think that out there somewhere that those things were made and were just kind of discarded. So it would have been, I think, a much better, stronger movie had they kept all those in.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I wondered about that because I'm like, yeah, it does seem like there's more interesting things to explore about it, but yeah, I mean, when you take out the things that made that movie so iconic, that, I mean, yeah, just not a great idea.
Oh yeah, and I believe, I may be wrong, I think that basically that movie ends with them taking off after the dog. Like, it's
Oh,
like the whole build up to that,
okay.
and how close they were to stopping it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this,
Great idea. It's an exciting idea for a movie. It just didn't work.
yeah, just not great execution. I mean, that happens sometimes. I feel like we glossed over Keith David, by the way. I guess we should mention him too, because he's
Oh,
a main
Keith David
character.
is so great. Well, I don't know if he's the main character. I think
No,
Kurt
he's not
Russell's
the
the
main.
main character,
Yeah,
but
but a main.
yeah, Keith David always does an amazing performance. And I had a friend just today mentioned that that he'd met him at a convention. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
kind of
because he
cool.
does a lot of voiceover work too, right?
I think he does. Yes, he's got a
Yeah.
good voice for it.
Hmm. Okay. Well, are there any scenes or anything that we haven't covered yet that you wanted to talk about? The movie is an hour and 49
Um,
minutes. It's not super long.
there's just so much good to it. The whole sequence of McCready going out and coming back and them not letting him back in. All of
Yeah,
this,
I like that.
there's all these frustrations and trust issues that I like a lot.
Hmm.
And just having seen the dog go up to somebody where you just see their shadow, look up at the dog or turn around to
Yeah.
look at him and you don't know who it is. There's just so much great mistrust in this.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like the enemy is obviously this alien, but it's also, their inability to trust one another, that
Yeah, they
it's like
become the
they're
threat.
up against so much. Yeah.
It's
100%.
just so good. I've got the IMDb pulled up and it's playing the trailer, and so it's just crazy how much good there is in this, how well this was shot, considering I believe this was a fairly low budget in contrast with other productions at the time.
Yeah.
Um, John Carpenter didn't always have people throwing money at him. A lot of his stuff was just kind of removed from what people were, what studios knew would sell, and they didn't quite trust him a lot. I think with a lot of directors, once they do get that trust and they start getting these giant budgets, they don't do as well. They don't. It's like, I don't know if there's more confidence that they can do it, but maybe they don't fight quite as much to get exactly what they saw in there. But these I think that's a big part of why some of these older horror movies are so much better than a lot of what we get today.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
not too
was
judgmental on them. There's the whole big thing about I don't know, that just with horror movies, it's almost like there can be a horror movie that's not very good and I'll enjoy it. I'm not too big on I can tell when a movie is bad and I can still enjoy it. And just as I can really hate a movie but recognize that it's very good. But I think it's with horror movies, I'm just a lot more lenient typically, but this one I recognize, I feel it's a really good, very special horror movie.
Yeah, I agree. I saw recently the latest season of True Detective. Have you seen that?
I have not. I've heard it's
Okay.
great. I've heard
There
that the first season was great and the second not so much, but I don't
Yeah.
know either way.
So this season, I thought, I'm like reading through an article to see if she was, the director and creator of the season, Issa Lopez, was inspired by the Thing, because I thought about the Thing a lot watching it, because it kind of opens on some scientists that are out on the ice, kind of in isolation, and there's a big weird death that happens. I don't want to say too much, but I thought about the Thing a lot watching it. It's
Oh
kinda got
yeah,
some
yeah.
weird magical creepiness to it, so you might. Oh, yeah, peer closely at the DVDs lined up on Tesla shelves, and you'll find one to be conspicuously visible, John Carpenter's 1982 classic about a group of research scientists in Antarctica. Sound familiar? Yeah. See, you gotta watch it.
Oh,
I
that
think
sounds
you'll
great.
enjoy it.
I love
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Great Easter egg, but okay. Well, I guess that wraps up what we came here to talk about today. So I will ask you a couple of closing questions then.
Okay.
And question number one would be, uh, can you summarize? I know we've talked about it for the past 30 minutes or so, but if you wanted to summarize, what keeps you coming back to this movie? Why do you think you've seen it so many times?
I think it's an incredible study of special effects. I think it's a wonderful study of mistrust and desolation and makes you afraid not just of the creature but of the environment that you're in. All of these
Mhm.
stories keep me coming back. I've seen Sphere more times than I can count as well. We revisit it all the time. These stories, they have this element that, you know in Halloween, for example, Laurie's able to send the kids down the street shouting for help.
Mhm.
There's a town, there are people there who can help.
Yeah.
These stories, there's no one who can help you, and there's nowhere for you to go. You simply
Very
have to
true.
wait to confront this thing, or be killed by it. And that's such a scary premise. And all the times that I've seen this, that's still always scary to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, if you had to pitch this movie to somebody, and you might say something similar, how would you pitch this to someone that's never seen
Oh boy.
it?
Um, I think a lot of that pitch would be summarized well by what you read at the beginning. You have a team of researchers in the Antarctic. They are they are they're oh, what is the word I'm looking for? It's not intercepted, infiltrated by
Yeah,
an alien who can take the form of any of them, and is in there somewhere.
yeah,
They have to find out who it is or be killed off one by one. I
yeah.
think that does kind of sum it up.
Yeah, I think this is a classic, a cult classic. And I think some of the best horror out there are movies that didn't do well when they were released, but over time we've come to see what masterpieces they are. I think I'm thinking of my favorite film, The Shining. Um,
So good.
so good. But was also not, received well when it first came out. But I think if you want to see some classic horror and you want to see, if you're really into like Stephen King and you're into like Stranger Things or those recent It movies, I feel like that's pulled in a whole new generation of fans that are, you know, watching something that's very nostalgic and calling back to an earlier time. Well, The Thing is a great movie to see because it's the peak of that time in terms of horror. So definitely check it out. And I think even if you're not into traditional horror, I think it's an interesting subgenre of like sci-fi horror and a lot of suspense. Yeah, I would recommend it to pretty much anybody. I mean, I guess I would say if gore is not your thing, you might want to skip it, but if you're a horror fan, you need to watch it,
Well,
basically.
and I would say also, with the gore thing, I like gore if it's well used in the movie. And
Same.
I don't care, for example, for what they call like gore porn, or where it's just like the entire movie you're seeing gore. It loses its impact, and so I'm not like, ew, gore. It's just I stop caring because I'm seeing it the whole time. It doesn't matter. I
Yeah,
find that if it's used well and it's effective, then it brings the shock value that it's after, without
right.
trying to do it the whole time. There's no shock value if it's there the whole time. This
I
movie, I
agree.
feel, spaces it out and uses it so creatively, um, that I almost would say that even somebody who isn't into gory movies might still enjoy this, because it's I guess the gore is not quite human gore. Most of the what
I
you're seeing
agree.
is, you're seeing
Like
like
Alien.
these like changing anatomy, and the insides of
Sort
an
of
alien that is mid
Cronenberg-ish.
change. So it is more, I guess, like a horror scientific version of it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very creative.
It is. It kinda reminds me of, like, Cronenberg or something, you
Yes,
know?
yes.
Like, the body horror, but also, like you said, far enough removed from reality that I feel the same way. So I would agree with that. Well, Albie, this has been really fun. Thank you
It has
for
been.
coming on. Can you go ahead and plug the things you need to plug again? I just wanna make sure people can find you.
Well, they can find pretty much all of my social medias by googling my name, Albie Robles, ALBIE ROBLES. That'll bring up my website, my IMDb, and all of my socials. I will say that we are gonna do another Maki show soon. We mentioned
Oh,
Alamo
good.
Draft House earlier, and we're actually doing a show to raise funds for those employees that did not get paid, and we're trying to help them out. So we're gonna have a fundraising show on the 19th of July, and
Okay.
that's going to be at the Free Play in Fort Worth.
All right, Albie. Well, thank you again for coming on and hope to have you back soon.
Absolutely. I'm always down to talk about horror movies.
Great.
Thanks a lot. Bye.